Hello, 2360 students. I hope everyone had a great last couple of weeks, especially a great Easter. So, we are getting ready to be in our last module. So, we are working in our last module before we do makeups and finish out. I can't believe that the semester is flying by and we just have a few weeks left. So, this week we're working in module 7. Now, Module 7 is really looking at your role and what role do you play as a teacher when you are trying to help students, right? So, we just finished Module 6, was really talking about how do you manage challenging behaviors, which is going to help us because we're going to be working on a behavior plan and look at how we can adapt a lesson to fit the needs of your case study child. So, when we were wrapping up the last module, you were submitting and looking at um, your case study embedded opportunities. So, where within the day could you try to help the child meet the goals? Well, what we're looking at specifically in lesson 7.1 and lesson 7.2 is really looking at using your knowledge of that students with disability and their issues and challenges, and you address them, right? So when we're looking at chapter 7, I want us to really look at not only your role, but how can we look at those challenging behaviors and address them? And how do we take a lesson and kind of tweak it to support that student? So, what you're going to be doing is you're going to go through the lesson 7.1 and 7.2. You will have a discussion activity as well as doing a behavior adapted lesson and a reflection. Reflection part is it should be a part of your routine as an educator. You should always reflect on what you're doing, look at the positives and some challenges you have, and some things that you can tweak, which I feel like the adapted lesson is really going to help guide you into your reflection piece. And knowing that you've been working on this case study with the same child, that's going to also be a big portion of that reflection as well. So there will be no quiz, you'll see here. The things that you're going to be submitting to the Dropbox is going to be your adapted lesson, your behavior lesson with that reflection included. You also have that discussion part as well. So let's go ahead and kind of walk you through the assignments that you have to do for this week. So again, looking at our learning objectives and our focusing questions that help guide you through these two lessons. So, the first thing to realize is that when we're done with this lesson 7.1 and 7.2, you should be able to, you know, look at specific characteristics of effective teachers, right? So, that's why we're looking at behavior plans and adapted lessons and your role as a teacher, looking at the current issues and challenges in the field, and then looking at any kind of organizations and careers that could really help you. Also, we're looking at not only what role you play, but what are some characteristics of good teachers, right? So, what do we need to do as teachers to ensure that we are supporting that child and they have a good learning experience? Then we're also looking at what does it mean to be a professional working with children who have disabilities in early childhood specifically, right? And what are the current issues and challenges in the field of early childhood and special education? So these are the guiding questions that are really going to help you and you should focus on as you're going through 7.1 and 7.2. So you will look here. The first section is the roles and characteristics and how you ensure a good learning experience for all children. 7.2 is really looking at those challenges, looking at emerging populations, poverty, homelessness, current issues of diversity, looking at health needs, looking at how do you as a teacher prepare professionally, looking at what kind of resources and organizations can help you when you're working with special needs children and how you can be an advocate for those children. So, getting into the assignments, here's how you're going to be assessed. Okay. So, the first thing I want us to look at is let's just jump into the discussion activity first. So, the discussion activity is really looking at the modules that you've been doing as a whole, right? So, the course. And you can get to the discussion by going to communication and hit discussion. And you have to scroll down to where it says Module 7. With this discussion, I want you to have at least 350 words. But these questions I gave you are going to be supporting your reflection, right? So, what was new information that you learned in this course? What was the most surprising or new way of thinking about something for you that you didn't think about before? Are there any topics or ideas that influenced you and that you would take with you in your teaching? And then what are some things you want to know more about and how can you grow in that topic or in that topic or content area? Those are the things I want you to focus on with that discussion activity. Okay, and you'll see here. So now moving on into the last portion of your case study work with your child that you picked. So the first section I want to look at, and I want to note here, I am going to be putting in some examples on the course homepage with the video. So you're watching this video will be right underneath it. These examples will help you get an idea of what I'm looking at when you're finished with it. So the first one we're going to look at is your behavior case study work. So in module 6 in lesson 6.2, you were learning about managing challenging behaviors, right? So taking that information that you know about your case study child, we're going to do a behavior plan. So whenever we're doing FBAs, that's called functional behavior assessments, it helps us gather information and collect data. And that assessment really helps us lead to what we call the hypothesis of function, right? So, what's the function of that behavior? What's triggering it? Why are they doing it? Normally, it's to communicate something. They want to avoid something or gain something most of the time. So, once you conduct that functional behavior assessment and you collect your data and you come up with the hypothesis of function of the behavior, then you're able to put a behavior intervention plan in place, right? And this behavior intervention plan can address more than one behavior in multiple contexts. So, a functional behavior assessment is a lot, right? It's just a lot. So, what you're going to be doing here is really a more simplified version, if you will, of what an ABC form is, which you have learned a little bit about, which is stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. The hypothesis of function. So, what's the function of the behavior and the behavior intervention plan? So, this is all encompassing all of those things in a simplified version. Really, the purpose of this assignment is to really support that student, right? To looking at the consequences. How are you going to replace those behaviors? So, what I want you to do is, I have a behavior chart here, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay. So, you'll see here it is a simplified version. You have your ABC. A, antecedent starts for trigger. So, what's triggering? What happens right before the behavior occurs? We have behavior, maintaining the consequence. So when we're talking about consequence, usually that's what happens to the child. What does a teacher do once a child is exploiting those behaviors? The hypothesis of function is really what you think the behavior is. What is the child doing, right? What's happening? And then we want to replace that unwanted behavior, right? That challenging behavior. So, how can we prevent those triggers? So, antecedent preventions. What are some new skills that we want to use to replace those unwanted behaviors? And then, what are the new consequences? So, when a child does this, to the challenging behavior, instead of doing what you used to do, what are you going to do? And what new skills are you going to introduce? That way, you can offset that challenging behavior. That's what you're going to be completing. So what you have to do here is you're going to choose your child here. You'll see I have them all listed. So you're going to pick your same case study child and you're going to address only one of the challenging behaviors in your case study child. Okay, remember your child may have more than one, but we're focusing on only one. Um, so remember, when you focus on one and you start with one and you address that challenging behavior, a lot of times it will affect and address lots of things. And you'll see that maybe a lot of the other behaviors kind of diminish over time as well. That's why we're just concentrating on one. Okay. So you will be using it. So when you click on, let's say, Clayton, Okay, I have him already pulled up. Hold on. If we click on Clayton, let's just say Clayton is your child. Remember, you're choosing one of them here from the list. You only pick your child. So let's say mine was Clayton. You'll see here that there's two behavior concerns listed. Now remember, all this is gathered from the data and all the information we've had about Clayton the entire time. Okay, this is just being more specific, focusing on those behavior concerns. You're going to pick one. Okay, so the first behavior concern is that during free play or center's time, Clayton is observed in the art center where markers and paper have been on the table to encourage the children to do some drawing. Clayton stands at the table and lines up the markers in front of him. He selects one and attempts to pull off the top, and when it doesn't come off, he bangs it on the table and picks up another marker, repeats the action, and then begins throwing the markers off the table one at a time. A peer at the table across from him calls out for the teacher who comes to the area telling Clayton, "We don't throw our toys." Okay, so this is kind of the things that we're seeing. Okay, this behavior is one of the concerns. There's two things going on here, but I only want you to pick one. Okay, so you'll read it and pick one to address. Now, I want to show you an example. And by the way, I did list the rubric here. Okay, so that way you will understand what I'm looking for. So I'm going to show you an example of a behavior plan that is of Clayton. So what we showed you here is we put exactly the things that's happening with that challenging behavior. They chose challenging behavior 1 with the markers. So Clayton is unable to pull the top off the marker. That's what's triggering him to get upset. He needs help. He don't know how to communicate that. So this is explaining what the behavior is, like what he's doing. He's throwing things. Maintaining the consequence. What did the teacher do every time this happens? Well, she tells Clayton that they do not throw toys and tells him to pick them up and something else if he can't use the marker correctly. She assists him with picking up the markers. He pushed the paper off the table angrily and walked away. Okay, so that's what's been happening. What's the hypothesis of the function? Well, Clayton gets very frustrated and upset when he's unable to perform an activity the way he would like to. This causes him to lash out. So that's what's going on with the behavior. Now remember, part of doing a behavioral functional behavior assessment is not only gathering your data and thinking of the hypothesis of function, but we have to replace the unwanted behavior. How can we prevent these triggers? Well, we can provide assistance to Clayton when he's performing activities that are difficult for him in order to minimize some of this frustration, because the frustration is what's causing him to lash out. That's what they said that you could do. Obviously, there's more than one prevention you can use. This is what the student chose to put. The new skill, remember, new skills are what you want to try to help the student practice. We want them to be independent. We want them to work through this so they can realize there's other ways to react. So, what we're going to teach Clayton to do is to attempt to practice working on his muscles. So maybe we need to work on gross and fine motor skills with him, right? That way we can help him become strong enough so he can take the marker lid off himself and use scissors. So these fine motor skills and gross motor skills are things that can help him so that way he will be able to do these things independently and not become upset or frustrated. Now, with the challenging behavior, what do you do if he explicits this behavior again, where he throws the markers? Well, you take the items away from him. Okay, before up here, if you look, they said if he can't pick them up and use it the right way, that he needs to find something else. But in this instant, they just said, okay, I'm just taking them away and he can sit in timeout for 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, that's if he does this behavior. Now, we obviously want to teach him to be independent and assist him any way we can, but we also want to teach him a new behavior. We don't want to keep putting him in timeout and taking things away. That's not going to help us over the long run, and it's not going to make him feel um, it's not going to make him feel good, and then there's going to be negative connotation toward the teacher, and then that hurts the relationship. So overall, we don't want to continue to do that. That's why we have to come up with new responses. So the new skill is we provide patient and stability. Okay. But if it continues to be difficult and unwilling, he should not be allowed to use those things until he will learn how to use it properly, reinforcing those new skills. But we also need to be patient. Okay, just don't just come over there and take them away and then put them in timeout and that's it. We have to talk through this with him. We have to be patient, but we also have to be stern. This is not what we do. At the same time, supporting him and helping him with those fine motor skills. Another way, too, is to get the parents involved, right? Or the guardians, because we want them to be able to teach him independence as well. These things will kind of heat off some of those antecedent behaviors. So that's what you're going to be submitting to Dropbox. And again, this example will be underneath the video on the course homepage. The second assignment you're going to be submitting is going to be your module case study assignment. Okay, so this is going to be your lesson adaptation. You're going to adopt a lesson and you're going to tweak it to support your case study child. Okay, so there's two parts to this assignment. The first part is adapting a lesson, and the second part is that reflection component that I talked about. So let's first look at what the paper would be. Okay, so first you're going to adapt a lesson. So down here, you're going to see these lesson plans. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to choose one. So you'll see all the children, your case study child, but you'll see that each one has two lessons. We're only going to choose one. Okay. And let's say we're going to choose this first one. Okay. So here's the lesson. You're going to read through it, okay, and you're going to see some parts that may or may not work. So that's what it's called by adapting. You have to make it your own in order to support Clayton's goals. So first you're going to pick this. You're going to look at the objectives, the standards, the materials that will be used, what's the procedure, when they're going to embed this in, and then how they will assess Clayton. Okay, so this is the lesson plan. And what you're going to be doing is you are going to have to make some modifications, right, to ensure that you're supporting the student and meeting their goals. So once you select which lesson you want to do, you're going to look at the objective again, the materials and preparation. Is this going to be with small group, individual, large group? What are the procedures and the assessment, as I mentioned? Now you're going to think of ways to modify. So, looking at your child, what are their needs? What are their strengths? What kind of adaptations or modifications could you use to help them meet their goals? Now, one way you're going to do this is that whenever you're working with this goal, you are going to do these specific things to let me know how you modify it. You're going to add these modifications into the notes to each section of the lesson plan where they occur. So, completely in the lesson plan, right in there is where you're going to do your adaptations. Each lesson plan components marked with a red asterisk and underline above may be adapted. Okay, so all these things here you can fix. So, let's look at the lesson plan again. Okay, a lot of those things can be fixed. Some things may not be, okay? Also think about modification accommodation. You can put notes on the lesson plan in parentheses or use a different color font, and I'm going to show you an example here in a minute. But not only do you need to make modifications, you need to provide an explanation of how this is going to support that child's goals, right? Or that appropriate challenge. You can add extensions onto the activity if you feel it will support the child or the objective goals. Okay, so remember, you got to make changes or modifications, um, but I need to be able to see what those are in easily by just looking at it. That's why we say to do a different color ink or maybe do it in like italicized, just some way I can see the difference between the original lesson and then your modifications. Okay. So remember, when we're looking at the goal, it needs to be the least intrusive adaptation. That means that we need to think about changing the environment first. That's always the things you would look at first to change.
Then, if you need to change anything else, you can maybe modify the activity or the routine. Maybe adapt different materials, right? Or and then lastly, you'll look at how you're going to instruct the child, right? So think about the least resistant being environment first when you're making modifications. Okay. Um, Here's a checklist here that I put just to get you to think about when you finished it. Did I select one of the lesson plans? Did I review all the child's needs, strengths, goals that support? Going back to those case study projects that you've been doing this entire term. Did I make sure that's easy for the instructor to look at it? Did I put it in parentheses? Wherever I did modification adaptions, are they different color ink so that they can look at it easily? Did I justify the changes to the lesson plan and why I did it and how they relate to the child's goal and support them? Okay, this is the rubric that is for this specific assignment to see how you're going to be graded. You can earn up to 25 points on this one. Now, you're not done. We're going to get to the second part in just a minute, but I wanted to show you an example of a completed adaption. Okay, so this is the lesson adapted. They chose Clayton lesson plan one. Remember, you choose one or two. Um, and you can see here they made changes inside of the actual procedures, right? And you'll see it's a different color, right? Um, and you have to justify why you did it. So you don't have to use a different color. You can put it in parentheses, but I want you to look at the changes you're going to make and put it directly inside of the actual lesson plan itself. Okay. Always look at changing the environment first, then the materials, then the instruction, and then you can look at changing anything else after that. Okay. The second part is going to be your reflection, right? So, reflection is really looking at your whole case study group, especially this one too, and thinking about these topics here: listening, sharing, supporting, creating. Now, remember, even though you worked on this case study project alone, many times you're going to have a team. Okay, that's why it talks about kind of team participation because you are going to work on a team when you are an educator in an early childhood setting. So, I gave you some guiding questions about listening, sharing, supporting, creating. Um, so I want you to answer these questions and reflect, okay? And your reflection should be at least 400 words, right? So this reflection is really going to help you look at what your strengths and weaknesses are throughout this whole project. So when we look at the case study project, we have to look at all the things you did: your disability, PowerPoint, when you did your transition plan, when you did your embedded opportunity, your behavior plan, your lesson plan, all those things. So we're looking at that in a whole when we're talking about your reflection. Okay, so the first part here is going to be submitted to Dropbox as well as your behavior plan. So let me show you real quick where you have to do the discussions. Okay, so if you scroll down, you're going to see what I've learned. That's the first discussion that I gave you. The second one is going to be where you're going to drop your reflection. So it's going to be in the same Dropbox, but you have to put them. So look here. If you scroll down to Dropbox, you're going to see behavior plan, lesson adaptation, and participation reflection. That has to be in here. Now, in the calendar, it says April 14th, but you'll look, I've extended it to say April 21st. The reason I did that is because right now a lot of us are focusing on inclusive practices field work. And I wanted you to really have time to look at the discussion about what this course meant to you. What did you learn? Positive things you took away from it. I also wanted you to spend some time really working on the behavior plan and a lesson, and then really looking at your participation and reflection overall in your case study work in this course. So that's why I extended it. So the date is a little different. You have until the 21st to do these. I even extended the uh, what you've learned. So if you look here, I don't even open it really
until the 15th of April because I want you to concentrate on the other things first. Okay, so you'll see I even gave you extra time, and that actually doesn't close the 26th. One thing I did want to note, you do not have a module quiz for 7. April 15th is when I'm going to open up makeup work. So that would be your makeup quizzes. And any assignments that maybe you've missed, I allow a student to make up one quiz and then also an assignment. So that makeup period is going to start April 15th. So if you are one that's missed anything, please reach out to me and we will try to get that opened up for you. All right, guys, continue your work on your inclusive practices, fieldwork assignment, and reach out if you have any questions. Like I said, I'm available to meet on Teams or Zoom if you need any help. All right, guys, I hope you have a great couple weeks. And don't worry, I will definitely be sending a video or an email out reminding you about makeups. Another thing to note too is that there will be a course feedback as well, but that is not going to be due until April 26th. Uh, and I don't actually have it open until April 22nd. So I may open it early, but I'll send another email or video about that later on. All right, guys, until next time, take care.